She heard the click of the front door lock at 10:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, and she knew before she turned the handle that the key in her hand no longer fit. The porch light above her was on. Her suitcase was on the concrete, still zipped, the handle broken from where the driver had dropped it the day before at the airport. Inside the house, she could hear a woman laughing. Not her sister, not the housekeeper. A laugh that belonged to a woman who thought she was safe. She had been gone 11 days. 11 days at her father's bedside in a private room at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, holding his hand while the doctors tried 3 different medications and finally told her he would live, but that the next stroke, if it came, would not be gentle. She had flown back to Lagos overnight on a red-eye, 13 hours in the middle seat, because she had booked the flight in a rush and had not asked for anything better. She was 31 years old, 5'4", 118 pounds, because she had not eaten a full meal since the phone call. She was wearing the same beige linen dress she had traveled in and one silver bangle her mother had left her when she died in 2009. She did not knock again. She sat down on the top step of her own house, folded her hands on her lap, and waited for someone inside to remember her. What Chidinma Osei did not know, sitting on that porch with her broken suitcase beside her, was that her husband had already signed papers she had never been shown. And what her husband did not know, sitting inside that house with a woman who was not his wife, was that the name at the top of one of those papers was about to become the loudest name in the room. Her name was Chidinma Osei, though her husband and everyone in their circle called her Dinma because he had said the full name was too old-fashioned for a modern wife. She had let him shorten her. She had let him shorten a lot of things. She was born in Enugu in 1994, raised in Lagos, educated at the London School of Economics on a scholarship her father had insisted she compete for, even though he could have paid 10 times over. Her father, Chief Emmanuel Osei, had built Osei Holdings from a single shipping container on the Apapa docks in 1978 into a private conglomerate with subsidiaries in energy, telecommunications, and real estate across 4 West African countries. Chidinma was his only child. She had grown up eating jollof rice with her nanny in a kitchen that had marble floors and a chef who had been trained in Paris, and she had never once mentioned any of this to the man she married. She had met Tobena Nwosu at a mutual friend's engagement dinner in Victoria Island 4 years earlier. He was 34 then, a mid-level executive at an oil services firm, handsome in the way that men who spend money on their haircuts are handsome, with a voice that made everything he said sound important. He had asked her what her father did, and she had said her father was retired. He had asked her what her mother did, and she had said her mother had passed. He had not asked her anything else about her family, and she had been grateful. She wanted, for one time in her life, to be chosen for herself. So she had married him in a small ceremony at a chapel in Ikoyi, wearing a dress she had picked from a rack at a boutique in Lekki for 400,000 naira because she had not wanted to draw attention. Her father had walked her down the aisle in a plain agbada and had not corrected anyone who assumed he was a modest man. She had folded herself smaller and smaller over the 4 years of that marriage. She had learned to say, "We can't afford that." When Tobena asked about vacations, she could have paid for 100 times over. She had learned to praise his job, his instincts, his ambitions. Even the ones she could see were unrealistic. She had transferred a house into his name last April because he had said a man could not respect himself living under his wife's roof, and she had wanted him to respect himself. The house on Bordean Road in Ikoyi, 4 bedrooms, a garden with 2 mango trees, was in his name now. She had not told her father. Her father would have said what he always said, which was that a woman who hides her strength eventually forgets she has any. She had wanted to prove her father wrong. The laugh inside the house came again. Then a man's voice, low, saying something she could not make out. Then, footsteps in the hallway. The porch light flickered once and stayed on. Chidinma sat with her hands folded and did not move. At 11:16 p.m. The front door opened. Tobena stood in the doorway in a white shirt she had bought him from a shop on Sloane Street in London last Christmas. Behind him, further back in the hallway, stood a woman in a red silk robe. The woman was taller than Chidinma. Her hair was pulled up. She was holding a wine glass in her left hand, and she did not look surprised. Tobena looked at Chidinma on the step. He looked at the suitcase. He did not open the door wider. He said, "Dinma, why didn't you call?" She said, "My phone died on the plane." He said, "You should have called from the airport." She said, "I want to come inside." He stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind him. He kept one hand on the handle. He said, "Dinma, this is not a good time. Zainab is here. We are having a conversation. Can you go to a hotel tonight? I will call you tomorrow and we can sit down." She looked past his shoulder. The woman in the red robe was watching from the hallway. She had eyes that had already decided what this conversation was. Chidinma said, "This is my house." Tobena said, "The papers say it is my house." She did not answer. She did not stand up. She sat with her hands folded and looked at her husband in the doorway of the house she had bought and paid for and put in his name. Because he had said a man needed to feel like a man, he said, "Dinma, please, don't make this a scene." The neighbors. She stood up then. Slowly, the way her grandmother had taught her to stand when a room was against her, back straight, chin level, hands loose at her sides. She picked up the broken suitcase by the frame because the handle would not hold. She walked down the 3 steps of her own porch. She walked to the gate. She did not turn around. She did not cry. She heard the door close behind her at 11:23 p.m., and she heard the deadbolt slide. And she heard the woman in the red robe laugh once, softly, the way women laugh when they think a competition has ended. Chidinma stood at the gate for a long time. She had no phone. She had no bag. She had a passport in the side pocket of the suitcase and a credit card in the passport sleeve and one silver bangle on her right wrist. She had $412 in cash inside a zippered envelope in the lining of the suitcase because her father had taught her always to travel with cash that no one knew about. She had the address of one hotel in Ikoyi that she trusted. She lifted the broken suitcase against her hip and started walking. She did not know yet what the woman inside the house was already writing on a piece of hotel stationery she had brought with her. She did not know that Tobena had a folder in the top drawer of his desk with the deed to the house, a signature that was not quite hers, and a lawyer's letter dated the previous Tuesday. She did not know that the driver who had dropped her at the airport 11 days ago had been paid 500,000 naira to lose her suitcase, and had lost it on purpose in the way a professional loses something, and had returned it with the handle broken as evidence that he had tried. She did not know any of this yet. She was walking down Bourdion Road at 11:34 p.m., carrying a broken suitcase, and her phone was dead, and her father was in a hospital bed in Los Angeles, and she had made herself small for 4 years for a man who had already replaced her. She walked 11 blocks. The heel of her left sandal broke on the 10th block, and she took both sandals off and carried them in her free hand. The asphalt was still warm from the day. Her feet were bare. A security guard at the gate of a house she passed watched her go by and did not offer help because a woman with a broken suitcase walking down Bourdion at midnight was not something he wanted to become involved in. She reached the hotel at 12:19 a.m. The night manager looked at her feet before her face. He looked at the suitcase. He asked if she had a reservation. She said no. He asked for identification. She handed him her passport. He looked at the passport, and then he looked at her again, and then he looked at the passport a second time, and then he stood up straight. He said, "Madam, please sit down. I will bring a room key." She did not know yet why the name in the passport had changed his face. Her father's name did not appear on her passport. Only her own. But the night manager was old enough to have worked in Lagos hotels for 31 years, and he had seen the name Osai before, and he knew the way a rich family's daughter looked when she was pretending not to be one, and he knew what a broken suitcase and bare feet meant when the name on the passport was Osai. He brought her a room key and a pair of hotel slippers and a bottle of water. He asked if she needed anything else. She asked if she could use his phone. He handed her his own personal phone without asking why. She dialed a number she had memorized when she was 11 years old. It rang twice. A man's voice answered. He said, "Osei Holdings, private line." "Speak," she said. "It's me. Something has happened. I need to see my father." The voice on the other end went quiet for one full second. Then it said, "Where are you?" She told him. The voice said, "Do not leave. A car is coming in 22 minutes. Do not use any card. Do not sign anything. Do not speak to your husband." "Do you understand me, Ma?" she said. "Yes," the voice said, "Ma. Your father has been asking for you for 2 days." She said, "I know." She hung up. She handed the phone back to the night manager. She sat down in the lobby chair. She did not cry. She folded her hands on her lap. And she waited. And while she waited, a black Land Cruiser with tinted windows and a diplomatic plate was already pulling out of a private garage in Ikoyi and heading toward the hotel driveway at a speed that no traffic officer in Lagos would stop. If this story is starting to sit somewhere in your chest, subscribe now, because what Chidinma finds inside the folder in her husband's desk drawer 3 days later is something Tobena Nwosu was never supposed to let her see. The car took her to a house on Banana Island that she had not stepped inside for 11 months. Her father's second residence. The gate opened before the car reached it. A woman in a white uniform met her at the front door with a tray. On the tray was a cup of ginger tea, hot, and a slice of dry toast, and a plain white envelope. The woman said, "Ma, Dr. Adeyemi is on the phone from Los Angeles. Your father is stable. He wants to speak to you." Chidinma took the phone. She held it to her ear with both hands. Her father's voice was thinner than she remembered, but it was still his voice. He said, "Chidinma," she said. "Papa," he said, "the house is in his name." She said, "Yes," he said, "you did not tell me." She said, "I know." There was a long silence. Then her father said, "Come to Los Angeles in the morning. Bring the passport. Bring nothing else. There is a man named Bankole in the study. He is my lawyer for domestic matters. Tell him everything. Then get on the plane. We will talk when you arrive." She said, "Papa, I am sorry." Her father said, "Chidinma, listen to me. A woman who hides her strength eventually forgets she has any. I have been telling you this since you were 6 years old. You have not forgotten. You have only put it down for a while. Pick it up in the morning. Bankole will help you. Come home." She hung up. She drank the ginger tea. She ate the toast. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On the paper, in a handwriting she recognized as her father's assistant Constance, was a list. The list had 8 items on it. Every item was a property. Beside every property was an address. Beside every address was a name. The 8th item on the list was the house on Bourdian Road in Ikoyi. Beside the address was a name. The name was Tobena Nwosu. The date beside the name was April 14th, 2024. Under the list, in her father's own handwriting, was one line. It said, "Every property purchased in your name has been tracked from the day it was bought." Bonkoli will explain. She did not know yet, sitting there with the envelope in her hand at 2:41 a.m., that her father had put a clause into the transfer document she had signed last April that she had never read carefully, because she had trusted the lawyer her father had sent, and she had trusted her husband, and she had wanted the transfer to be simple. The clause was one paragraph long. It said that any transfer of a primary marital residence purchased with funds originating from Osei Holdings was contingent on the marriage remaining in good standing as defined by fidelity and cohabitation, and that in the event of a material breach as documented by 2 independent witnesses, the transfer was voidable at the discretion of the original purchaser. Her father had written that clause himself. He had written it not because he distrusted Tobena. He had written it because he trusted no man completely, not even the ones he liked, and he had wanted his daughter protected in a way she would not know she needed until she needed it. The lawyer, Bonkoli, met her in the study at 3:15 a.m. He was a small man with gray hair and glasses and a folder under his arm that was already 2 inches thick. He sat across from her and did not offer condolences. He said, "Ma, tell me what happened. Start with the airport 11 days ago. Do not skip anything, even if you think it is embarrassing." She told him. He wrote nothing down. He listened for 40 minutes. When she was done, he said, "Ma, the house is yours. It has always been yours. The transfer is voidable. There are also 3 other matters. Your husband has been withdrawing money from a joint account he opened in your name without your knowledge. Your husband has signed a business partnership using your family name as collateral without authority. And the woman in the red robe is not a stranger. Her name is Zainab Adeyemi Bright. She was your husband's fiancée in 2019, before he met you. He never ended that relationship. He hid it." Chidinma sat very still. She did not cry. She looked at Bonkoli and she said, "How long have you known?" Bonkoli said, "Ma, your father asked me to watch 3 years ago. I have been watching. Nothing was ever actionable enough to bring to you until now. I am sorry." She said, "I am not angry with you." He said, "Ma, your father wants to know what you want to do." She was quiet for a long time. She thought about the porch light. She thought about the woman's laugh. She thought about the driver who had broken the handle of her suitcase on purpose. She thought about the 4 years she had made herself smaller, and she thought about the way her grandmother had folded her shirts slowly, carefully, as though the cloth were precious, and she thought about the moment on the porch when she had stood up and walked to the gate without turning around. She said, "I want the house back. I want the partnership dissolved. I want the joint account closed and the money recovered. I want Tobena to sign the divorce papers before he understands what is happening to him. And I want to be on the plane to Los Angeles at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, I do not want to see him again." Bonkoli nodded once. He said, "It will be done by Friday." She said, "One more thing, Bonkoli." He said, "Ma." She said, "The woman. Zainab, do not touch her." She did not know what he was. She thought she was competing with a wife who had let herself go. She did not know she was competing with nothing, because there was nothing to compete for. Leave her alone. Bonkoli looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "Yes, Ma, that is a decision your father would respect." By Friday, at 4:47 p.m., the house on Bourdion Road was back in Chidinma's name. The joint account was closed. The $340,000 Tobena had moved out of it over the last 11 months had been recovered from a shell company registered in his cousin's name in Port Harcourt. The business partnership he had signed using the Osei family name as collateral had been dissolved with a single letter from Boncoli's office that arrived at the partner firm at 9:04 a.m. and produced a phone call by 9:41 a.m. in which the partner firm's lawyer used the word "Sir" 14 times. The divorce papers were served to Tobena at his office at 2:30 p.m. by a process server who did not speak to him and did not wait for a response. Tobena called Chidinma's old number 60 7 times that afternoon. The number had been disconnected on Thursday morning. He drove to the house on Bourdillon Road at 6:15 p.m. He found the locks changed. He found a security officer at the gate who did not know his name and would not let him in. He found a letter taped to the gate in a plain white envelope with his name on it in a handwriting he did not recognize. Inside the letter was a single sheet of paper. On the paper, in the handwriting of Chidinma's father's assistant Constance, was one line. It said, "The house was never yours. She let you believe it was because she loved you. She does not love you anymore. Do not return here. Do not contact her. Do not contact her family. If you do, we will file every document we have prepared." There are 17 of them. Osei. Tobena stood at the gate holding the letter. He did not cry. He did not speak. He got back into his car. He sat with his hands on the steering wheel for a long time. He understood, for the first time, the shape of the thing he had married. He understood that he had been standing in the presence of a family whose name he had not bothered to look up, because his wife had folded herself so small that he had believed the smallness was the whole of her. He understood that he had traded a wife who owned the ground under his feet for a woman who had come to him in a red silk robe with a wineglass, and that the woman in the red silk robe had already left him a note at his office that afternoon that said only, "You never told me who she was." I would not have come, he understood, sitting in the car outside a gate that would never open for him again, that the porch light he had watched go dark behind Chidinma on Wednesday night had been the last light in his life that he had any power to turn off. Chidinma was in Los Angeles by then. She was sitting beside her father in a private room at Cedar Sinai, holding his hand. Her father was awake. He was thinner. He was smiling at her the way he had smiled at her when she was 6 years old and had brought him a drawing of a house with too many windows. He said, "Chidinma." She said, "Papa." He said, "You picked it up." She said, "I picked it up." He said, "Good, now do not put it down again." She said, "I will not." She sat with him for 3 more days. On the 3rd day, the doctors said he could go home. She flew back to Lagos with him on his plane, and she moved into the house on Bourdillon Road, and she hired a housekeeper who had worked for her mother in 2008 and had been looking for work for 2 months. And she planted a 3rd mango tree in the garden between the 2 that were already there. She was 31 years old. She had $412 in cash in an envelope, 1 silver bangle on her right wrist, a house that had always been hers, a father who was still alive, and a name she had stopped hiding. Tobena Nwosu left Lagos in September of that year and moved to Abuja, where he took a job at a firm that did not know his history and would not have cared if it had. Zainab Adeyemi Bright moved to Nairobi and married a banker 2 years later. Neither of them ever contacted Chidinma again. Neither of them ever spoke her name in public. They had learned, both of them, in different ways on the same Wednesday night, that a woman who folds herself smaller for a man is not a woman who has become smaller. She is a woman who has been waiting to see if the man is worth the folding. And when he is not, she stands up, back straight, chin level, hands loose at her sides, and she walks to the gate. Tobena thought he had left Chidinma with nothing. A porch, a broken suitcase, a closed door, a woman in a red robe laughing in a hallway. He thought the sound of the deadbolt sliding at 11:23 p.m. was the sound of him winning something. But the truth is, he left her with the one thing that would rebuild her and dismantle him. Her father's voice on the phone at 2:41 a.m. Her grandmother's instruction to stand straight when a room is against her. Her own name, which she had folded away for 4 years and which unfolded that Wednesday night the way a document unfolds when the right hand finally opens it. You can close a door on a person. You can change the locks on a Tuesday morning. You can bring another woman into the house they bought and paid for and put in your name because they loved you enough to make you feel like a man. But you cannot take from them what they were born carrying. You cannot erase what a father put into his daughter's spine before she was old enough to name it. And the night you close the door on a woman who has been folding herself for you is the last night in your life you will have any power over anything. Because while you are turning the deadbolt, she is already walking to the gate, and the car that comes for her at the gate is not a taxi. It is her father's car. It has always been her father's car. You just never asked her whose daughter she was. If a man you loved and trusted convinced you to hide the biggest part of yourself so he could feel comfortable beside you, and one day he showed you exactly what your smallness had cost you, would you know how to stand up? Would you know how to walk to the gate without turning around? And once you were on the other side of the gate, would you know how to unfold? Leave your answer in the comments. I really want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about hidden strength, quiet power, and the people the world overlooks until they change everything. I'll see you in the next one.